everyone. My name is Elaine of King's Entertainment Reviews. I'm also known as the Panda or just Panda. I don't need that article in there. And today I'm going to be reviewing Naomi Novik's new novel, Spinning Silver. At the beginning of Spinning Silver, we're introduced to Miriam, an adolescent from a family of moneylenders. She is basically the main protagonist in the story, even though the story is told from a few different perspectives. She is the daughter as well as the granddaughter of moneylenders. Her grandfather actually has a pretty good business going. He lives in a nearby city known as Visnia in a mansion with his wife. They have servants. They've got a big lawn. There's a gate around it and a wall and all that fancy stuff. They've always got food on the table. They have nice clothes. They're very, very comfortable. Miriam's father, on the other hand, is a terrible moneylender. And this is because he's just very, very kind-hearted and forgiving. When he goes out to collect money and people say, oh, I don't have anything to give you, he's fine with that and lets them not pay anything. Or he'll take goods that really aren't worth the value of the debt or not enough to really pay it off at any great rate. He's also someone who will just up and leave if someone starts yelling at him. He doesn't make enough effort to collect on these debts. And that causes a problem. It puts his family in an impoverished state. They don't have enough money to buy food, to eat regularly, to buy clothing that they need to stay warm during the winter. Medicine for Miriam's mother when she gets sick it's a huge, huge problem. And Miriam basically gets sick of it after a while. She realizes that the people in town do have more money than they say they have because she sees them getting food that they shouldn't be able to afford if they have no money. She hears them talking about all these nice meals that they're going to be making, sees them buying new outfits and things that they want, and living comfortably when her family is living in this impoverished state where they're very uncomfortable because people are just rude. And she gets to the point where she's just like, I'm done with this. I want my family to do well. So she decides she's going to take over her father's business and start collecting for him. After Miriam makes this decision, we see her mature pretty rapidly because she has to. She hardens her heart and sets out to claim what is owed her family, and soon gains a reputation for being able to turn silver into gold. Look, the name of the title, Spinning Silver. Anyway, eventually she starts to boast about her abilities pretty openly, and this draws the attention of the king of the Stark. They're basically like ice elves, is that a thing? Ice elves, who live in a snowy kingdom, basically in a nearby realm. I wouldn't really call it an alternate realm, but it's not the world that Miriam lives in, which is the sunlight realm. And essentially Miriam's fate and that of these two kingdoms, so the sunlight realm and the Stark realm, will be altered because of this boast and this decision. This initial change really stems from the challenge that the Stark King poses to Miriam, which is to turn his silver into gold. But as the novel progresses, Miriam will find some new allies, and with them uncover a secret that threatens both her realm and the realm that the Stark King and his people inhabit. And the novel really is about finding out if they can survive this challenge, this new threat. I enjoyed Spinning Silver for several different reasons. First, I felt like it was well written despite its numerous spelling and grammatical errors. And she usually came in the form of just missing words, especially when people were speaking. They'd be missing, articles and conjoining words and things like that, and it just made things a little awkward. Nothing crazy, but just a little bit off. The writing definitely could have been cleaner in these areas, but for the most part, it was pretty good. I also appreciated the fact that Spinning Silver contained a host of well-rounded, intriguing characters with their own distinct personalities and motivations, especially because I feel like lately I've been reading books where the characters are so similar they almost feel like the same person, or because they lack a personality completely and they're good at everything. So, your Gary Stews, your Mary Sues, just the boring shit. I know recently I talked about Throne of Glass by Sarah J. Maas. This is a prime example. Everyone was a cocky, arrogant buttface, and it was really, 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 really annoying. Got tired of that, and that is definitely not the case here. I also really liked that this included 3 strong female leads who consistently fought to attain whatever it was they desired. An example of a strong female lead would be Miriam, who I've already spoken a little bit about. As I said earlier, her family was not in the best state financially because her father was not collecting on people's debt. And Miriam got tired of that. She was like, forget that. I don't want to be uncomfortable. I don't want my mom to be sick. I want to be warm. I want to, fix up the house. And she went out and she did whatever it took to earn money to keep herself and her family safe, to keep them from getting sick, to keep them from starving, to keep them from being more or less incapable of surviving the harsh winter that had taken over the land. Another example of a strong female lead from Spinning Silver would be Wanda, whose life is in some ways very similar to Miriam's own and in others very, very different. First, Miriam's family lives within the town, while Wanda's lives on the edge of town. They live on a farm, and unfortunately the land isn't very good for growing crops, so they always struggle to bring in a good harvest. They've never really brought in a good harvest. As a result, they struggle to make money, to pay taxes, and their home is basically in a state of disarray. Wanda's home is falling apart for a few different reasons. First, it's physically falling apart. Like I said before, their harvests on this farm aren't very good. They don't have a lot of money. They struggle to pay taxes. They just don't have the money they need to keep their house in good shape. Second, Wanda's father is an alcoholic. He likes to spend any money they get on, alcoholic beverages, and he gets very drunk, and when he's drunk, he's a bit, shall we say, angry. And he likes to beat his children. The mom is no longer around. She died in childbirth, so one less income, I guess, which contributes to their impoverished state, first of all. Second, in some ways, I think she might have served as a barrier to protect her children from beatings. I don't think it was perfect, like, a person's going to beat who they're going to beat, but might have helped a little bit. So very unhealthy dynamic there. No money, small house in disarray, not a lot of family cohesiveness because of this situation with an abusive alcoholic father, not a lot of food to go around, tons and tons of problems here. Despite all of these hardships and all of these obstacles, Wanda is still willing to fight for a better life, not only for herself, but for her brothers Sergei and Stepan. She doesn't let this situation strip her of her will to dream that life can be better. And that's really, really good to see, because a lot of people, when they're faced with hardship after hardship after hardship and just depressing situation after depressing situation, give up and they don't want to try anymore. But Wanda is not like that in the least. She fights to protect herself from this unhealthy situation by, going to work for the Mandelstams. Yes, she was forced into work for them and she wasn't paid at first, but eventually she is paid some money and she saves it because she doesn't want her father to spend it on alcohol. And she decides that eventually she's going to use this money to get away and to, help both herself and her brothers. And she does her best too by doing this, by setting that money aside to get out of this toxic situation, to get away from these toxic relationships. She doesn't let them, to the best of her ability, take over her life and keep her from finding happiness, from enjoying certain moments, like just living in the moment every once in a while, even if she can't do it all the time, because this situation really does, in some ways, envelop a lot of her life and take over her life, even though she fights against it, if that makes sense. I think part of the reason why I appreciated these characters so much was because they were strong female leads, which is not something you see in a lot of literature. Literature is dominated by male protagonists. Contemporary, non-contemporary, it's what it is. And having these characters be so strong and so determined to accomplish what they want was refreshing. It was inspiring even. Especially when you consider the sort of time period they're in. I don't think this is a medieval time period. I'd call it almost more colonial. There was no year stated, so I'm not sure, but I would put it around that colonial-ish era. And during this time, and you really have to think about this, it's kind of amazing for them to have been these kinds of characters, because during that time, women had a very secondary role in society. They were caretakers, especially for children. They'd cook, they'd clean, they'd maintain the house, bake, whatever. They didn't really have a role in the greater society. They were taught to only speak when spoken to. They couldn't really be themselves. They couldn't be open. They didn't have the sort of freedoms that women have today. So when you consider, especially what Miriam did, by taking over her father's job, it's really, really amazing that these women were like this. These aren't the kinds of characters you would expect to see in a novel that took place during this time period. And that was so amazing and so refreshing, because to be honest, it gets tiring to read books where, okay, maybe there is a female lead, but it takes place in this kind of time period and they're not exciting. They have to be, put into this tiny little box that isn't what every woman was. But they were forced to be that because this is when this takes place. Moving away from the female characters now, I want to talk a little bit about Wanda's younger brother, Stepan. I really enjoyed the few chapters that were told from his perspective because I really felt like Novik captured his childish innocence in that stage in life where you are so innocent and there's, all these questions in your head and so many things you just don't understand because you're too young or, you're naive, you haven't experienced yet, you just haven't gained this knowledge. I was blown away by these chapters. I know he wasn't a particularly important character, but I looked forward to his chapters so much. I absolutely adored these chapters. Anything told from his perspective. I liked how he spoke in his narration, the way he thought, the way he looked at things. It was so interesting to me because, there's a part of me that remembers that time in my life, but there's a part of me that doesn't. And it was nice to see that again and to think that way again and to be so excited and confused by all these different things. Again, just like this character. I think now that I'm thinking about it and talking about it now, these drew me in more because I felt like I could see him more than the other characters. You know what I mean? Like, I relate to Miriam, I relate to Wanda, I relate to experiences, but there was something about when Stepan spoke that just drew me in a way that these other characters didn't. He engrossed me completely. I felt like I was there. I felt like I was with him, and that was absolutely amazing for me. I also enjoyed the world that Novik created and the lore that surrounded it, particularly the Stark Kingdom. I really enjoyed the description of the forest, the cabins in the forest, the snow, the white trees, and the icy mountain that the Stark lived in together. I thought it was beautiful. I thought it was interesting, and it all fit together. Icy forest, lots of snow, icy mountain, ice castle thing. Great stuff. I also appreciated the lack of gratuitous violence, sex scenes, and cursing, since that isn't something you see a lot nowadays, especially when you consider a lot of mainstream literature, things that are very popular right now, like A Song of Ice and Fire. I mean, they're amazing books, but lots of sex, lots of violence. Gets a little rough for someone like me who doesn't really like violence too much. With that all being said, I felt as though Spinning Silver suffered from several slow patches, and I feel like that was because Novik had a tendency to add too many details. Yes, it set the stage. Yes, it really helped me get into the world, but sometimes it was a bit too much. And had these details been pulled from a few places, I think the novel would have gone faster and it would have been even stronger than it stands now. Ultimately, I did very much enjoy this book, but there were a few problems that really bugged me. It was slow sometimes, grammar wasn't perfect, and that's something that drives me nuts. So ultimately, I only gave it a 3.5 out of 5 stars. Still very strong, but just a few issues that really needed to be amended to make it my kind of novel, like the perfect novel for me. Thanks for taking the time to listen to my review, everyone. If you like what you see, please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit that notification bell so you know what's up. And if you want your own copy of Spinning Silver, there's a link in the description. The book comes at no extra cost to you, and it really helps out the channel. Thanks again, and I hope you all have a wonderful day.